Hello, and welcome to Varn blog. And I want to ask you a question. Is loyalty to leadership that doesn't deliver anything to you actually pragmatic? Is someone promising you things with no sacrifice because if they ask you to sacrifice, you might hold them accountable for not delivering actually accountability? Why is it that there are more college degree holders than ever before and more ultra rich in the United States than ever before, and yet there's little accountability for any of them to do anything anywhere? From the Epstein Express to the demagogue on the GOP, etc. The loyalty is to the figure, to the hope, to the charisma. And Trump has a lizard brain charisma that if you deny, you're probably lying to yourself. But you are letting an 82-year-old man who seems to have his cabinet run by his family, they haven't had a cabinet meeting in months, tell you that he's the only person that can stand against you in the decline of democracy, and that the progressives decided to kiss the ring prematurely over and over again, while the party that man is in is lying to people about their own rules and laws? Is that pragmatism? Is pointing out how corrupt that is a right-wing talking point? Because it's fucking true. The left has not held its leaders accountable in a long time. And because of that, it's made the bright and shiny everything else, every other grift that you can throw on and pretend that it's somehow Marxism, get red and pink washed on any given day. Is that pragmatic? Is that how you're an adult in the room? Does it make sense while I'm getting more and more pissed off with everyone? Have you held the leaders accountable for their mistakes? I'll take the example of unions. People keep mistaking class independence for tailing a different group, because it's pretty clear that the Democrats, through the use of the National Labor Review Board finally actually kind of doing its job, have totally folded to the idea that they might get the PRO Act in a million years. We're not just talking about the strategy of patience for communism or socialism or even a transitional social democracy program. We're now talking about the strategy of patience for card check. The unions themselves have a growth goal that doesn't even match a declining population. They have not even really dealt with the fact that tons of industries are franchised and thus hard to get in any kind of union situation, not just in services either, but definitely there. But that includes traditional blue-collar jobs like mechanics and things that are downstream of the major unions. What do? Go to an easy source of temporary money, people who do need to be represented, TAs. Never mind the fact that a temporary workforce in the elite institutions of education should strike people as fucking weird and not something we ever should have signed up for. But there you go. I live in a progressive democratic city in one of the reddest states in America. And you know what it does? It talks all the right things when it comes to DEI initiatives and diversifying its school system, but it closes the black schools and the brown schools. We don't really have a black school, honestly. We're mostly brown. First, to let the declining populations on the East Bench keep their schools open, despite the fact that they're really where we're losing the children. That's a progressive city government. We can't do anything about the money. You don't want to. Why do we owe you loyalty? Oh, well, there's only two things in America. Then build it. The DSA could have been that thing. There are people in the DSA who don't want to make it that thing. But they would also have to deal with the fact the DSA's fundamental federated structure with pockets of locals and then a national doesn't make a lot of sense. That the MPC has a lot of power and then none. That regional coordination is kind of ad hoc on collectives of locals to build themselves. Not even anarchists would be normally okay with such horse shit. Yet, no one has an incentive to fix it because the caucus system, where the ideological sects are, fills in for that gap. So the people who get into the DSA's leadership have very little incentive to fix those structural problems unless one group can clearly win. But that isn't the case because the mass of the DSA is in places that are largely democratic, and the DSA in those areas tends to be more reformist than the DSA elsewhere. But that's just one organization. That's just one city. Peter Turchin can blather on about how the overproduction elites are going to lead to a collapse. And he might not be wrong. But it's not just the overproduction of elites. It's the systemic unaccountability in every single institution in American life. And when you point that out, people either go, let's go vote for a third party. You haven't been a counter institution to really run it. The Green Party might be an institution in certain cities, but it's not regionally or nationally. Nor has it ever been coherent. By the way, Camejo, one of the big ideological subsets of people who have influence on the reformists in the DSA, and whose group actually helped form it, jumped to the Green Party and created that mess. Other people just want to run strong populist groups or tail other people. Tail other people? Groups of socialists of a few hundred think the most important thing they can do is tail other people and get revenge on people in the DSA for slights. That's the best they can possibly do, is get behind some Cornel West campaign or Jill Stein. That is not building an independent movement. That is another Hail Mary pseudo-Bonapartist pass-up that you won't look at and take responsibility for. You don't replace a failing demagogue and a bunch of Marxist-Leninists from the 60s who've held onto organizations because they have wealth or wealth from buildings, and then try to change that when you don't understand the power structures and you were just attracted to it ideologically anyway. That's not even loyalty to leadership. That's loyalty to the idea and vapors and gas and vibes of leadership. Do you know why I don't join any organization? Because very few of them have honest leadership that is openly accountable, that actually isn't what it says it hates. The anti-PMC groups are filled with fucking disgruntled PMC. Whether or not we agree that they're a class, the professionals and managers are everywhere. And the middle tier likes to fight tooth and nail over what scrap of ground it can get. I don't care if you think I'm left wing or right wing anymore. I know where my heart is. And no, I'm not claiming to be beyond left and right. I've already explained many, many times how that's pretending these are fixed metaphysical positions that you can somehow transcend without fundamentally changing the totality of society. But I don't give a shit about whether or not I'm with a bunch of nominal leftists who are loyal to the Biden administration because they're afraid of a demagogue that they pretty much created the conditions to reemerge to. If this was protecting democracy, you fucking failed. Not like you actually looked at the structures of American democracy honestly to begin with. The number of people who agree with Aziz Rana, even in the Democratic Party, is kind of amazing. And yet they all pretend there's nothing they could have possibly done about it. But they structured the system they're in. They created the rules they play by. And if you haven't figured that out yet, then I don't know what to do for you. One party is basically a man at this point, and whatever vibes and whims he has, because he's at least charismatic, has real charisma. And the other party is a corpse of geriatric progressives from, I don't know, the 80s. And a few people who gave them life by creating movement, but not really opposing them in any significant way internally, which, by the way, structurally, there was no incentive for them to ever really do. And if they do, on one or two issues, like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, it is because of personal commitments beyond their politics and little else. And that's admirable. But that is not a political movement. My anarchist friends are often right about the nature of these systems when you try to participate them without looking at their incentives. But our elites, not just our bourgeoisie is so structurally removed that it barely cares about what's going on. But our elites also are structurally protected. And any loyalty to them that doesn't demand sacrifices from them is a fool's errand. No, a socialist movement is not just made up of blue-collar people of the working industrial class from the 1950s. Never has been, never will be. But if you can't control the elite elements within your group, if you cannot subordinate them and have them actually use their vision for to help your cause instead of using it for their own self-interest, if you cannot keep the reins and control the bureaucrats and the managers and the professionals and even the union leadership, then you got nothing. And don't call it pragmatism, because you're just lying to yourself. It's a sunk cost fallacy. Keep your peace, because it's going to get a lot more interesting. And don't say the left has no power, because you helped create the center that is right now. And the left has no power is a way of avoiding the responsibility for asking for things that did not demand sacrifice, commitment, and skin in the game. If you want to keep your peace, why do I end with that? Because you fundamentally need clear-headed thinking that isn't reactive, that doesn't get caught in 4 or 2-year cycles, that doesn't respond to the media on every single thing it does. And if you cannot self-discipline yourself to do that, just go play video games. We don't need you. But I hope you find some purpose in your life. Sincerely. Because there's a lot of lost boys and disaffected girls out there in their 30s. Giving into hope grifts or even anti-hope grifts. Tailing this or that and calling it independence. And giving blind loyalty to people who promise them the world but ask them for very little because they know they're not delivering on shit. And if you actually sacrifice more than your vote, you would be a lot more inclined to hold them accountable. Have a great day. And I do mean it. Keep your peace. And if that means depoliticizing, at least you're not hurting anybody. It's the people who think they are political and who are not. They're like the half-educated. They're more dangerous than if you don't play the game at all.